Welcome to the Nestled podcast. I'm April.
And I'm Bailey. We are friends and neighbors who left our design business to champion a message of hospitality.
We live in a time where deep connections are so hard to come by.
But we want no part of that.
Our desire is for people around us to be seen, heard, and known.
And we want to take you on that journey with us.
So come back each week to take a peek in our nest.
As always, the door will be open.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to the Nestled podcast. I'm April.
I'm Bailey, and we're so glad you guys are back.
Yes, we're so glad to have you with us today.
On this lovely Thursday.
Thursday afternoon.
Literally 12:30 in the afternoon. Look, guys, our promise to you is never to be on time, but to always show up when we can be there.
Right.
Just like in our regular lives, we're just doing the best we can, and we really wanted to get an episode out this week, so we just made it happen when we could.
Yes, we are excited about the next several weeks. We took a break last week from our typical interview type setup. Mm-hmm. I can't think of the word I was trying to say. But format. That's the word
I couldn't think of it either, so I was just keeping my mouth shut.
Yeah, so our typical format, and did a little break to talk about comparison with you guys. And you were so encouraging to us and gave us such great feedback, and we received a lot of messages from you saying this is something that I really struggle with, and even sharing with us some areas of struggle for you with comparison.
And one thing that we found was there was a lot of crossover. There are just a few main topics that people kept saying over and over. There are a few things that stood on their own, but for the most part, it was repeat subjects.
Yes.
So what we decided to do is we're going to do our first little mini-series.
A little series.
Little topical mini-series on comparison. And we know, like April was saying, this is a different format. We're not saying it's always going to be this way, but we probably are going to lean towards being a little bit more topical, I think, in the future.
Yeah, we're going to see how this goes. You guys give us your feedback. We would love any constructive criticism in our DMs.
Not in our reviews.
And any positive reinforcement can go to the reviews, along with a 5-star.
That's right.
Rating.
Oh, yeah, please don't mess up our 5-star rating because you don't like this new format. No, we will still probably do interviews, but we will slip those into these little topical series that we're doing. And we may find ourselves doing more episodes, just the two of us.
Yeah.
Than what's been typical in the past.
We hope that you guys like us.
Yeah.
We think those of you who have stuck around this long for this really curvy road that we've been on.
We really are trying just to take the podcast where we feel like God leads it.
Yes.
And, I mean, it was a God idea from the start, and so we're just trying to really be obedient in that and changing directions even when we know we may lose listeners or it may, we may see a dip, but just trusting that we're taking it where he wants it to go. And we were talking earlier about how some of you gave us encouragement this week. April and I had just finished talking about how we thought, we really need to do a series on contentment because it really seems to be a struggle with a lot of listeners, as it can be with us, and I think pretty much any person. And I'd started thinking, I don't know that this is the smartest decision from a business perspective. I think that we probably are going to see maybe a dip in listeners who are just listening for the regular interviews that we've been doing. And about that time, a really sweet listener sent us a super encouraging message. And one of the sentences that she said was, "I'm not going to stop listening."
Yes.
And we had not voiced that anywhere on Instagram or on the podcast that was a concern. But we felt very blessed by her and by God that, here's our thoughts and answers them immediately sometimes of, don't worry about that.
Well, and just in confirmation of trying to be obedient to where we feel like the Lord is leading the podcast. And we have this platform that we weren't necessarily seeking out, but the Lord has given it to us, and we want to be faithful to use it for his glory. And that is really our heart behind this series as well. And one of the things that we talked about last week in talking about comparison, the point that we really wanted to drive home was that our worth is found in Christ alone. And so that is going to be the foundation of everything that we talk about over the next several weeks. But we're probably not going to specifically hang out there a lot every week, because we want to give just some practical things of what we think we've seen work in our lives and other people's lives, and just taking some wisdom from experience from other people as well. But
but that'll be the undertone.
That's
just go
the
ahead
undertone.
And assume that is weaved in all of it.
Yes. And so we're calling this series
Nestled in Him.
Nestled in Him, because that really is the foundation of all of the things that we want to talk with you guys about over the next couple of weeks. And we can't wait to hear from you too, to see ways that the Lord has taught you to be content with where you are and what you have. And so we're excited.
We also have come up with some pretty simple weekly challenges that we're going to say with each topic. And so there's a hashtag, and it's hashtag Nestled in Him. And we want you guys to, if you feel led, to share what you're learning or what's working for you. Or when you do one of the challenges, use that hashtag so we can find each other and create community amongst our listeners. We're always trying to do that.
Yes, we talked a little bit about social media and the comparison game with it last week, but we want to use it for the benefits that can come from a community of people who maybe you don't run in the same circles, but you have the same heart behind creating community in where you live. But also, this is just a way to encourage one another, and so we want you guys to be a part of that. So hashtag Nestled in Him will be our kind of our theme for this series, and we're just really looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with and the ways that you use that in your relationships.
And your thoughts on some of this.
Yes.
That we talk about each week, because we have a lot to learn,
We have a lot of thoughts.
Well, we have a lot to learn, too. We do have a lot of thoughts. But we have a lot we can learn from all of you guys.
Right. And I know that you guys have wisdom that you are going to share with us. We can't wait to hear that. About the topics that we're going to be talking about, some of them may seem like they're kind of towards a certain group of people. For instance, today we're going to talk about comparison in marriage. But if you're not married, that does not mean that there's nothing for you and that you should just turn it off right now. Because I do think that there are things that can apply to dating relationships, to friendships, to all of your interactions with people, as far as how to dig in and find the good in relationships.
And then also, just practically, if you do plan to get married one day, or if you're currently in a dating relationship, if you can think of these things proactively before you are married, then you're already at an advantage, because you're not having to dig your way out of a hole.
Yeah.
I wish I'd have thought of a lot of these things, way back. Way back before I got married.
Way back in the old days.
Yeah. And so, but we're starting with marriage because it seemed to be
the most commonly mentioned.
Yeah, the most commonly mentioned thing that people said that they found in particular that they struggle in comparison with. I mean, by far, 60% of the people that we heard from said in marriage.
I was a little bit surprised, but then as I took a step back, I don't know why I would be surprised, because if there is one thing that I think our society and the world has really, attacked, and that the enemy wants to tear down, it would be the makeup of marriage and the family. And so, of course, we're going to struggle in that area. Don't you think that that's
Oh, absolutely.
to be expected?
Well, of course, the enemy wants to attack marriage, because I'll be honest with you guys, my marriage, and I have a wonderful husband, and so that helps. But we also are very proactive in trying to keep a healthy marriage.
Right.
But my marriage is what makes so much of my just day-to-day stuff manageable. It certainly makes life a lot more fun.
Yes.
And so I want that for anyone listening who's I have no fun in my marriage,
Right.
I want you to have that companion.
Yes, because it is a relationship that takes a lot of effort, as any relationship does. But this is the one that it's not going anywhere. Hopefully,
yeah.
It's not going anywhere, and it's worth fighting for it to be great.
And I think we're gonna have a few warnings at the beginning of
Yes.
But one of those I would say is, before we list out any of the advice we have for you guys, one thing that we want to say is, like, go ahead right now and agree to stop looking side to side.
Yes.
Because we heard so much, like, wishing my marriage looked like this person or wishing my husband did X. Like, the first step is just literally
stop that.
Stop it. Like, stop looking side to side, because you don't know those couples, like what you see on social media, the little snap pictures or whatever. What's snapshots? You're getting a snapshot of what they want you to see.
Yes.
Nobody wants you to see the
You're
ugly
getting
of
everybody's
their marriage.
highlight reel.
Yes. And so, like, just keep that in mind.
Right. But also, your marriage is a treasure, and it's as good as you can. I mean, like, as much as you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And so, like, focus in and put your effort towards making that as great as it can be, instead of looking at someone else with envy or with this, this measuring stick of feeling like, does my marriage measure up based on these other people that I'm seeing? So, like, I think that to start it all off, we all just say, okay, don't do that anymore.
Yeah. Let's stop looking side to side.
Right.
The other thing we want to say is, if you are in a marriage that is emotionally, physically, sexually abusive, like, these things don't apply to that. We want you to be safe. Like, don't be so worried about, maintaining a marriage that you and your children are in an unsafe environment.
Yes, we are not counselors. We're not therapists. We do.
No.
So we are here, and we're saying, for those of you who are in a marriage, even maybe it's not even an unsafe situation, but, like, there's some real history of trust being broken, or a whole host of issues. Like, our first advice to you is seek counsel.
Yeah, seek
professional
people who can help you.
Yes. Don't just keep trying to make things better in your own self, because there are instances, there is no shame in seeking professional help to be able to learn to move past some things that maybe have happened in the past, or even before you were married.
Right. The more that in our story of parenting a child from adoption, the more that I learn about trauma, the more I realize, like, how so many people are walking around with traumas that they've never actually faced, and how damaging that is just under the surface. So, like, handle your stuff. There's no shame in that.
No.
Do the self-work and get to a healthy place so that you even have a platform to, like, jump off of into what we're talking about.
Right. So we wanted to kind of preface with that. And then we're going to jump in with something that really kind of made us start evaluating a little bit more this week, I think. We've been very bothered by something going on in our...
in pop culture.
In pop culture.
We are not a pop culture podcast on purpose, but I do love
Bailey
pop culture.
loves pop culture.
And I always have. And it's always driven my husband crazy, because he's like, I don't understand why this is the knowledge that you're choosing
to fill your mind.
To fill
with.
your mind. Why do you know everything about all the celebrities, but, like, you can't remember our children's birthdays? Like, I don't understand how your brain works, but I do know my kids' birthdays. It just takes me a second to weed through which one is which. But, so, if any of you saw A Star is Born.
Yes, I haven't seen it.
I have. And it was a very well done movie. Lady Gaga, her performance was so impressive. I kind of wish she would just go by her regular name.
Right.
Because...
What is her regular name?
Stephanie something.
Stephanie. We're going to call her Stephanie.
Stephanie did such a beautiful job. I just feel like Lady Gaga at this point is like... I feel like it's, like, beneath her, because she is, like, a brilliant artist.
Yes.
A brilliant actress.
Just embrace your name. You don't need some stage name.
Right.
Anymore. Anyway.
And Bradley Cooper did an excellent job, too. And then I think so many people loved their characters and loved cheering them on, that whenever they had such a convincing performance at the Oscars... I mean, y'all saw social media.
Gosh.
Everybody wanted them together. And you guys, on the front row is his girlfriend of 4 years and the mother of his child.
Right.
But because everyone saw the chemistry, between Stephanie
and Bradley.
and Bradley, they're like, literally, leave your partner.
Yeah.
And go there. And sure, chemistry is hormones.
Right. And it would play a big role.
Yeah.
In getting together with my husband.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
it's important that you have some chemistry.
It's important-ish.
But that is not it. That is not the end-all, be-all. And I just think, it was such a portrait of... And I know Bradley Cooper and his girlfriend are not actually married. But I want you to picture if your husband was at work and he really hit it off with another woman. And then, everyone who you know is cheering for him to leave you for that other woman.
Right.
Because they obviously get along so well. What a nightmare.
Yeah.
How devastating would that be?
Yes.
And I think that, but it's a picture of that's where the world is right now.
Well, and there is just this very romanticized idea of love.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is part of our trap in comparison is because we have this romanticized view of what marriage is supposed to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this Twitter-pated feeling is what Bambi called it, but this whole thing of this romantic love, and that love is something that ebbs and flows.
Right.
That is not the basis in which we build a life. And it can't be what we're looking to keep us from our eyes wandering somewhere else.
Right. Yeah, there have been times that my husband looked at me with googly eyes, and that was wonderful. And there have also been times when he had to help me to the bathroom after I had a baby.
Right.
And I did not look like the woman that he looked at with googly eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's when I felt love and complete and total trust and vulnerability with my husband is when he sees me at my worst and he loves me anyway.
Right.
And he's there for maybe even more.
Yeah.
And so
we just wanted to, the only reason we even brought that up is because we felt like it was such a picture of where our society is in their view of love and their view of relationship and where we are not.
Right. Well, and I think we have to remember as Christians, everything we do should be countercultural.
Right.
So when we say that, we need to be aware, I have friends who are Christians who are posting about that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And not in a, hey guys, let's not recommend that he leaves the mother of his child for another woman. It's just so easy to get caught up in that trap.
Yeah.
And so
we just have to value marriage. And I know, like we said, they're not married. But, we have to value marriage so much higher than what the world views it. And I think that starts in how we value our own marriages. Mm-hmm. And so we have just a few things that we kind of put together of ways that we think that we've all just agreed we're not going to talk about comparison anymore because now we're okay, stop that.
Mm-hmm.
So now we just want to give you some things that we've talked through of what are ways that we have found in our own marriages or that we've seen in other people and I had this conversation with my husband and with my brother-in-law over lunch to okay guys, from a male perspective, what are some ways that you see this as dangerous? What are some things that you would give advice to women of that they're struggling in this way?
Mm-hmm. We almost actually brought our husbands onto this podcast.
Yeah,
this week, but just didn't work out time-wise.
Yeah, when they're home, our kids are also home. So.
Right. So here we are. You just get us. You don't get their much wiser advice that they could have given.
You get our ability to kind of remember what they said.
Right. So the first one, and I know this is something that we are going to say probably in every one of these topics.
Yes.
But words matter.
Your words matter.
They matter so much.
Yes.
So in a lot of different ways. First of all, something that April and Lance actually did Justin and I's premarital counseling. And you guys, we did not know we were going to end up where we are relationally at this point. So, it's not at this point in time they did our premarital counseling. Okay. Just as a prequel to this. But one thing that she talked about was how early in her marriage she felt convicted not to talk poorly about her husband to other women. And she gave me some practical advice about that, and I held on to that and continued to. And I think that's made a huge difference in our marriage.
Yeah, for sure it has for us. And one of the things that Lance shares often with couples that are younger than us is that the one thing that has kept him from we've been through a lot as a couple, but there was just a lot of baggage and a lot of past things that it's not my story to tell. But he has said time and again that the fact that he knows that he can trust me, that I'm not going to talk bad about him, that I'm not going to be demeaning about him, that no one is going to hear me complain and say negative things about him, even in periods of time in our marriage when things weren't as good as they could have been. He could trust that my words were always going to be to build him up. Mm-hmm. And how, as a man, that is one of the biggest gifts I could give him.
And I think that is a trap that a lot of women find themselves in. It's very easy to grumble about our husbands, but it's another one of those situations where you have to flip it. And like, if I heard that at a guy's night, my husband was just tearing me up, that would devastate me.
Oh, yeah. I mean, totally break my heart.
Yeah. And so let's be so careful about the ways that we speak about our husbands. Another thing that we need to do in remembering that words matter is like focus on the good.
Focus on the good.
Because hopefully your husband's not focusing on all the things we suck at. You know, like.
Right. But also there is we are in a culture where, man, it is really in to be really whiny and really negative. And really critical.
It's fun and, like, romanticized, really. Like, it's to be
And
negative.
honestly, in the podcast world, like, that's a huge thing, is that there are a whole season upon season of people literally just critiquing and criticizing.
That's my problem with a lot of pop culture podcasts.
Yes.
Is whenever I listen, like, I want to listen because I do care about, like, the lives of stars. And then I'm thinking, oh, y'all are just mean.
Yeah.
I don't need to listen to people being mean.
Right. So I think that we have to decide that we're going to focus on good. And one of the ways that we can do that is to call out the good and the gifts that you see in your spouse. Mm-hmm. And so instead of being frustrated or talking about the bad things you see, flip that. Like, just make a conscious choice. Like, okay, maybe I don't like that he did not take the trash out like I asked him to, or whatever. I mean, I'm just trying to think of something off the top of my head. Maybe that wasn't a good example, but he got up and went to work today. Right. You know, whatever it is, like, we can always find something good to focus on instead.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's just with the overarching topic of words matter, like, if you are purposefully seeking out the good in your spouse and purposefully speaking about the good in your spouse, you're going to start noticing that more than the negative. And also the negative stuff is going to just start to seem so small. Mm-hmm. Because when you really start to realize all the blessings that person brings to your life, like, you appreciate them so much more.
Yeah.
And one thing that we've talked about that we have struggled with at different times in our marriage, and I know a lot of you can probably relate to this, is when you have small kids and your husband is working a lot, it is so stressful for you at home. Mm-hmm. And April's husband works 2 jobs, always. My husband commonly finds himself working multiple jobs because he's a teacher. He's able to do that. You know, he gets off in the afternoon and then he can go work somewhere at night, and he works all summer. And it can be easy whenever, like, the easy thing to do when they walk in is to be like, oh, thank goodness you're home.
Finally, you don't even know what I've been dealing with these little heathens of yours all day long.
You know? I mean, it can feel that way too.
Yeah.
But we have to reframe that and remember, like, man, they aren't doing that because it's fun.
Right.
They're doing that because they're trying to meet the needs of their family. And, like, my husband would so much rather be at home relaxing with the kids and having time with me. But instead, he's sacrificing to be out there to try and give us a better financial ground to stand on.
Right.
And so, like, I need to be thankful for that. And whenever he walks in, be like, oh, thank goodness you're home because I missed you.
Right. And with that, I think that is the next thing as far as our words of saying thank you. Mm-hmm. You know, acknowledging and saying that you appreciate things that your husband does or that he says or ways that he makes you feel loved, like saying those things out loud. And this is one of the things that Lance said that he was his advice was in that there are different seasons and we all kind of experience different stressors and different times, but that his encouragement to wives would be to pursue your husband. And I think that because, and what made me think about it was in saying thank you, I think oftentimes you'll find that he will start to see the things that you do and reciprocate that. And it's the same, in the same way of Lance said, there have been seasons in our marriage, of course, early on, he was the one who was the pursuer. But there have been times that sometimes because I was a little bit closed off because I had a baby or because of, emotional crazy lady that happens because,
It happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
And so then he's a little bit like walking on eggshells. And then all of a sudden I realize it and I pursue him, which in turn makes him want to pursue me.
Right.
And that was the one thing that he said is he was like, I would encourage people, if you aren't feeling like your husband is pursuing you, whether it be romantically, whether it be sexually, whether it be just in like an encouraging word or whatever, then be the initiator of that. Not that that's all on you, but it is something that I think often we'll find is reciprocated whenever we initiate it.
Yeah, I think a lot of women really underestimate how much our husbands want and need and desire to be pursued.
Yes.
That doesn't just go away whenever you're married and have children and a job, that suddenly you don't want to be pursued. Like, we all want that.
Yes.
I want to feel pursued. I don't want to feel like my husband is looking elsewhere. I want him to think that I'm the best.
Right.
And the greatest, and he's so lucky to have me. You know what I mean? Like, that's how you want, and that's how we should want them to feel.
And that's, yes. And I mean, I think that there is something to be said for every time Lance walks in the room, my eyes should light up. My whole face should light up. I should be so happy to see him. And that's whether he walks into the living room from the bedroom or whether he walks in the door from the end of the day or I run into him at the store, which has happened to us before when we were both like out in the middle of the day and he had to go to the store for work. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like,
There's
we
my
should
person.
still light up. Yeah.
When they walk in the room at church.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that there's really something to be said.
Yeah, so your words matter. That was the point of all that.
Yeah. The next one kind of is going to sound very similar, but communication matters.
Communication matters.
My husband says all the time, I can't read your mind.
Yes.
And I have said to him, I feel like after 13 years, you should be able to.
Yeah.
Or there'll be times we're in conversations with other people and I'm trying to tell him what to say.
Yeah,
through
my eyes.
I'm like, how can you not hear my thoughts yet? But he can't hear my thoughts. So communication matters, and we have to know, like, what's worth fighting for.
Yes. I think that we have to learn how to fight well. And for some people, I think that you start to look at other couples and you think, gosh, they never fight. And that's not necessarily true, first of all, because you don't see them all the time. But second of all, sometimes that's not healthy.
Right.
You're never going to walk in our house and Lance and I be shouting at each other.
Right.
But we have had to learn throughout the years how to fight well and to fight for the things that matter.
Right.
And for us, that doesn't mean shouting and getting, so angry that we can't have a normal conversation, but it does mean communicating clearly our needs and communicating clearly our expectations of one another.
And doing it in a timely fashion. Like, you can't just let things simmer and simmer and simmer. You will explode.
Yes.
You have to let your needs be known or your feelings be known as they happen, within reason. I think the other thing is good to remember that comes with practice. Like, my discussions with Justin earlier in our marriage were a little more explosive than they are now. But we know each other well enough and we've practiced communicating effectively enough that, like, that's just not really a necessary thing for us to have to do. Also, have this communication in front of your kids.
Yeah.
Don't always do it behind closed doors. That is something that we had to work through, is our parents handled communication amongst themselves in different ways in our individual families. And so coming together, we had to try and merge that And Justin very much always wanted everything to be for a certain period of time and behind closed doors. And he just I don't know, it took us a while to figure out how to merge our styles. But for your kids to be able to know how to have healthy communication, they need to see you communicate.
Yes. And the other thing about that, we had to, because of particularly Lance's background of being from a broken home and then me being someone who always wanted to keep the peace and didn't want to upset him, we found that we would either not talk about it at all, or it felt like it was going to be the end. And we had to come to the table and both of us had to say, okay, we've got to be able to deal with frustrations and unmet expectations and hurt feelings. But I needed for Lance to say, and he needed for me to say out loud, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not pushing back from the table. Like, we can talk through this, and I can get mad or I can get frustrated, but at the end it's going to be done, and then we're still going to be married, and we're still in this together. And that was kind of like the starting point of us learning how to fight well. Because then it didn't mean that now all of a sudden we had explosive fights, but it meant that now we were able to talk through things because there was a trust of, I know that it's not going to be too much. And those things, even in the small things, you've got to communicate them. You have to talk about, and you have to learn. There's some of it that for us is timing. I know there are times that it's not the right time to bring something up, but it has to be addressed. And you have to be wise about that. But that's part of just getting to know your person.
Also knowing when to back up.
Yeah.
Nothing good is going to come from me pushing my husband whenever I can tell it's not the right time.
Yeah.
Nothing good, and so, yeah, but that, again, comes from knowing each other.
Yes.
Like we should just be studying our partners every single day. That, for the rest of our lives. Like, as long as I'm blessed to be alive and have my husband, walking through life with me, I want to pursue him, and I want to get to know him. And we're completely different people than when we were at 17 when we started dating. But, we're better people.
Yes.
Because we have helped one another grow and we've grown together.
Right.
To the point where I'm like, if anything ever happens, I don't have the energy to get to know anybody else. No. I have got to know him. You know what I mean?
Right. And it's this treasure that you get to continue to uncover more and more about your spouse. And it gets to be, the trust becomes deeper, the vulnerability becomes more, it's just not, you start to lose those fears, and gosh, y'all, it's worth it.
Yes.
It's just worth it.
Yes. The other thing that I would add to this is let stuff go when it's time to let it go.
Yes.
Once you've communicated and you've talked about it, don't nag. Let it go. Don't keep bringing up past stuff. If you can truly forgive your spouse,
yes,
forgive them and let it go.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I have not been agitated with my husband in the past year or two, but I would have to really think hard to try and recall any of the things that have upset me.
Yeah.
Because truly, let it go.
Yeah.
I'm not hanging on to
communicate those things and then leave them there.
Right.
Don't continue to carry them.
And I think your husband will follow suit in that.
Yeah.
We all push each other, our spouses and ourselves, whether in positive way or a negative way, we're affecting each other with every word we say and how we react to each situation. So let's all try and grow in a positive way.
Yeah.
Our last point we were going to make today is that community matters.
Community matters. And I know that we talk about community a lot on here. We feel like it is vital to having a healthy view of community as a whole and on relationships. But in marriage, it's very, very important that you have people around you who have the same values as you, who are cheering for you in your marriage, who are Rachel Kincaid several weeks ago on the podcast about, like, you need the people in your life that are gonna put the couch in front of the door when you say you're leaving your husband. Like,
Right.
you need people who you let in, but you also need people that you can look up to and you can see their relationship and see things that are healthy. If you're like, I'm just really struggling to know how to have a good, strong, healthy marriage, then find somebody in your church that you're like, I want my marriage to look like them, and have them over for dinner.
Right. One way that community has been important for Justin and I is in the past few years, whenever life maybe was a little more difficult, making sure that we have people who will push us to have fun. Because I'm an Enneagram Type 7. I need fun.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be really easy for us to hole up in our house together and feel bad about leaving our kids, and not go and doing anything. But whenever we've committed with another couple, like, we'll get the sitter and we'll go have fun together. And
Yeah.
that's so important for us, and the happiness in our marriage is just for us to laugh together.
Yeah. And I think that you have to be careful with who you allow to have a voice into your marriage.
Absolutely.
Not to say that everyone has to look and think and act just like you, but there are a lot of voices out there that are not healthy and that are not good for your relationship. And so I think that it's so important that we fill our lives with voices that are encouraging us, that are, like I said, cheering us on.
Yeah. Don't surround yourself with the people who want to see you fall and
Yeah.
fail, because,
Find new people.
Find new
if
people.
If that's what you feel. And I think that we can kind of wrap up with one of the biggest did we want to say anything else about community?
No, no.
Okay.
That's fine.
One of the things that we talked about in marriage that I think is the culmination of all of it is that you should be your husband's biggest cheerleader.
And you should be each other's best friend.
Absolute best friend.
There have been times, April and I have talked about this, like, we're to the point now where we consider one another each other's best friend, but we also have felt in the past like we didn't necessarily need outside friends because our husband is truly our best friend.
Yeah. There's not another person in this world that I could spend all day, every day with, never tire of.
Yeah. Look, if Justin and I could both just, like, be retired and spend all our time, nothing would make us happier.
Yeah.
Like, he has to go to work out of necessity, but, like, I truly, anytime I can get him to take off, I get him to take off.
Yeah.
I want to spend all my time with him.
Yeah, Lance is working, 30 minutes away right now, which is not that far, but on a house, and I'm like, hey, I'm coming to have lunch with you. I literally am going to get to see you for 30 minutes, but, like, I just want to be with you because you're literally my favorite person.
Yeah. And so figure out how, like, what works for you. How can you spend time together and nurture that friendship?
Yes.
I mentioned earlier that Justin and I need to laugh together. A lot of times what that looks like is us watching stand-up comedy on the TV at night when our kids go to bed. Find your thing.
Yeah, and for us, the nurturing that relationship, it means that sometimes I ignore the dishes in the sink, and sometimes I ignore the laundry because we have such a short amount of time together at night that after the kids go to bed, like, I'm going to focus my energy there.
I'm glad that you said that because so often we have people say, how do you do it all? How do you do that? And I'm like, we don't do it all. We just have to figure out what we're willing to sacrifice. And for me, a lot of times that does look like not doing the dishes at night.
Yeah.
And I know that there are people out there that are cringing, but you know what? Whenever I drop my kids off at school in the morning, I'm blessed to be able to come home since I work from home, and I can do my dishes then. And there were times whenever I did work a full-time job out of the home, and it looked like doing the dishes right before dinner a lot of times, but my husband wasn't home yet. And whenever he was home and we got the kids in bed, that was my chance to spend time with him, and I just didn't want to sacrifice that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's the solution for everybody because the dishes don't bother me. The laundry doesn't bother me. If you or your husband are people who literally, like, can't rest, whenever those things aren't done, then maybe you have to figure
that out.
Yeah, figure out when you can fit in your special time together. But
and if you have kids, like, yes, kids are important and they are a very big part of our priorities, but they are not the top relationship. As right under our relationship with God has to be our relationship with our spouse, and that's the best gift we can give to our kids is to love one another well.
Right. Well, and a lot of us have parents now who are empty nesters. Like, we don't want our parents to depend on us for all of their entertainment.
Right. And their happiness.
And their relationships. Like, your relationships, even though you're now a mother and father, are still very important. And when your kids grow up, and what's going to come very quickly.
Yeah.
When your kids grow up and you look at each other, like, you want to be like, high five, teammate, we did it, and now we get to go relax and have fun.
Yes. And what a gift that God has given us a partner to be able to walk through life with, to be able to experience. At the end of the day, like, they've seen our very worst, they've seen our very best. We've been our very most vulnerable with them in all ways. And we still get to be loved and cherished by one another. And that is such a gift. And so we just have to nurture it. And we're not saying the things that, like, because I think my husband's like the best.
To be fair to all of you who are listening and going, but my husband doesn't. Look, we have really wonderful husbands.
Right.
I mean,
and I don't say that because I want you to compare.
No, we don't want you. No, that's like, but like, I'm saying, like, truthfully, to be fair to anybody, like, it's not all us. Like, we have wonderful, godly men as husbands, but they're also men. They're also human. And, like, our marriage has taken just as much work for us to get here and will continue to take just as much work to maintain it as any other relationship.
Yeah. And so,
look, my husband works with all women. He's the only male at his school. Like, I have to maintain my relationship with that man,
Look, I tell people all the time, I'm like, don't even, because there are plenty of women out there, plenty of other people looking at your man who would be glad to take him.
Right.
Off your hands.
Right.
And I will fight
Oh, man. Whenever you see, like, the crazy people who take out billboards and stuff, I'm like, don't think I'm above that. Like.
We have a regular dialogue about the crazy comes out.
Yeah. So anyway,
don't mess with my man. That's just on a side note.
You're right. But seriously,
we're
praying for you guys in your marriages.
Yes.
And some people reached out to us further after we asked you guys last week, what are some ways that you struggle? And we're praying for y'all in your marriage.
Yeah.
And we know that if you're not currently happy, we know you can get there.
Yeah. And our challenge this week for you guys is something very simple. And like we said, the things that we really wanted to emphasize is that your words matter, that communication matters, that community matters. And so this week, our challenge is to use your words to encourage your spouse.
That can be verbally, which I think personally is like one of the best ways that you can encourage your husband is just to look him in the eyes, or your wife if you're a male listening. Look your spouse in the eyes and tell them, like, some things that you see in them that are good and that you're thankful for and that you love. But also, you can write them a letter. You can post it on social media. A lot of people feel more loved if they feel like they're being called out publicly.
Yeah.
The good thing. So, if that's you guys in your relationship, do that and use the hashtag
while you're at it.
Nestled in him, so we can encourage you and encouraging your spouse.
And to cheer you on, because we're so happy to see those things. And ladies and gentlemen, if there are any listening, instead of looking at someone and saying, gosh, I wish my husband would do that, let's celebrate with one another.
Yes.
If someone uses our hashtag and is encouraging their husband, let's all just celebrate that together.
Yes. So we'll do our own posts, too, about our husbands.
Today's Lance's birthday, so I'll do a special birthday post.
Happy birthday, Lance.
Happy birthday to Lance.
We are so thankful for you, Lance.
Yes.
In our whole little Nestled family. We are so thankful for you for so many reasons, and April will list them out today.
I will list them. Some of them.
Some of them, right.
Some of them are not appropriate for Instagram.
Oh, gosh. We'll try not to make you all throw up from our mushy gushy.
Yes.
So.
Everyone always comments on any nice post Lance makes. And he's a words guy, though.
See, my husband is not a words guy, and I am a words girl, and so that's just one of those things we've had to learn to communicate.
He wrote one word a lot on your calendar, though.
So my husband pursues me. I'll just say that. He has one word that he really likes.
Yeah.
So anyway, he filled out our calendar for the month and erased all the things that we need to do and put the thing that he wanted to do
for every day.
So,
and
anyway.
let's just encourage you to do that too.
Yeah. Look, here's the thing. We'll say sex on the podcast. We can say that because we don't have a boss.
Allowed.
Like, y'all have sex with your spouse. It's important.
It's very important.
Sorry, Mom. I know you're listening, but I'm here, so I know you know it's important too. So, like...
You too. Just don't talk to me about it.
Yeah, don't ever talk to me about it.
Please don't post about that on Instagram either.
No, gosh. Please don't post about that. Yes. Yes. I do understand why your door was so often locked now, but... Anyway, seriously though, have sex with your spouse and pursue your husband in that way. And pursue your wives in that way.
Yes.
So, we love you guys.
Yes, we do. And we planned on this podcast being like 15 minutes, and we're at almost 50 minutes. So, we love you, and thank you for listening if you if you held out for this long.
We did introduce for like 20 minutes what the series was, though.
Yeah.
So, like, we promised to try and keep all the rest of them well below 30 minutes.
Yes.
So.
But we hope you guys enjoy, and... Hashtag Nestled in Him. We can't wait to see what the Lord is going to do through this series. So.
Yes. And if you're not already in our Facebook group, it's called Nestled in the Neighborhood. We probably won't over the next week do any lives about that in there because I'm going on a cruise.
Whoop, whoop.
But in the coming weeks, while we are doing these challenges and we've got another series that we're going to do this summer, we will go live in that group to talk with you about like what you're doing and the growth that you're seeing. So do your challenge this week, do your challenge next week, and then we'll probably talk about both of those challenges and see what God's doing in your life after you've been doing this. So thank you so much for listening.
Thanks for taking a peek in our nest.
We hope you come back next week. As always, the door will be open.